as somebody that practices holistic lifestyle is a recognition that mindset is one foundational characteristic of our experience, right? The others that every single one of us do, every single human being on earth does, is we all think. The mindset piece.
Welcome to the Manders Mindset Podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest's mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Amanda's Mindset. I'm your host, Amanda Russo, aka The Breathing Goddess, and I'm here today with Rob Pengelly, a holistic lifestyle coach who I got connected with through Sean Rivers, and I'm here with Rob today.
Hello, good to be here.
Thanks for being on the podcast, Rob. So, first question for you. Who would you say Rob is at the core?
At the core, I would say that I am an astral warrior nested inside a physical being that is here to have as many experiences as I can on a continued path of growth and supporting the people that I love. Hot open.
That's awesome. That's great. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about your background with alcohol and your relationship with that.
Yeah, for sure. So this is, connected to who I am at the core, right? And I share that I view myself as an astral warrior after having had really challenging experiences throughout my journey so far, in the sense of starting at a place of not understanding difficulties, challenges, pain, suffering, and navigating through those to come to the place that I currently am. That the way that I make sense of that experience is that growth comes from the challenge, from the negative experience, right? In quotes, and that I can choose to allow those experiences to continue taking up victim headspace in my being, or I can look at them from the standpoint of that I chose them on a certain level because I have the ability to navigate those challenges and come out the other side stronger, right? So that's where that astral warrior part comes from. So with alcohol in particular, that journey began for me when I was a young child as a way to deal with the experience of leaving everything that I knew, I grew up in Britain, and my entire family is from there. And so when I was 10 years old, it was actually just before I was 10 years old, um, I left my entire family, my entire culture, everything that I knew about. I often will reflect that the one thing that stayed constant was that I spoke English with a different accent. But that was the one similarity between rural England, where I grew up, and central New Jersey, where I moved. And to cope with the magnitude of that change, I started sneaking alcohol at 10, 11 years old, and pretty quickly progressed to drinking hard liquor by the time that I was a teenager. And, being a teenage boy, like hanging out with my friends, using alcohol as a vehicle to have fun and connect with people and situations that I had a really challenging time connecting with, feeling like I belonged. Alcohol dropped a lot of those barriers for me. And at the same time, it also got its claws into me in a pretty unique way. I am an individual that, as I drink, my ability to self-regulate and make decisions about an appropriate time to stop drinking disappear. And the driving force becomes to continue drinking at all costs. And I got blackout drunk for the first time when I was 15 years old, and everything escalated and accelerated from there through my late teenage years, and into my early 20s. And I was able to maintain an ability to operate within society while I was drinking through force of intellect. I was very intelligent about when I drank and how I drank, right? And would like regulate my drinking, until I knew I was in an environment where I could take the brakes off. And after doing that for many, many years, about 4 years ago, I decided to make a change in my overall life, by leaving my career in order to create space and time for me to take a longer, deeper look at how I was living my life from the perspective of my overall well-being, and alcohol playing a huge part of that. And the last 4 years have looked very different than the preceding 30 plus, from that perspective. And that's where I started actively making a lot of identity shifts in who I was relative to who I wanted to be, in order to move forward and live the rest of my life in a more meaningful way than I had spent the prior, at that point, 42 years. I was 42 years old when I made that decision.
Wow. So, what would you say made you realize you wanted to change that identity?
That's a great question. Similar to what I would imagine a lot of people experience, it is a multitude of events that lead to an overall feeling of unhappiness and unease, dissatisfaction with who is looking back um, from the mirror, right? Uh, my mirror and I were good friends for a long time. I would spend a lot of time staring at the mirror and trying to figure out why I was doing what I was doing and who the hell I was. And with that overall sense of dis-ease in my being in early 2021, I witnessed my father be hospitalized because he was in an ammonia-induced coma from alcohol consumption and alcohol-induced kidney disease. And that moment in time, I was able to project myself forward multiple decades in an instant and see myself laying on the same bed in some different hospital, having lived the same life to produce the same outcome. And I knew that I wanted to change the trajectory of my life in that moment. It still took me 15 months to stop drinking. But yeah, that's the acute answer to the chronic problem that I was facing.
Wow. So, what transpired in between you witnessing your dad and then 15 months later, you stopping alcohol?
Yeah, great question and a fun story. So I've always been an athlete. I have gravitated toward movement and sports my entire life. Some of my earliest memories are playing football, soccer, when I lived in Britain, and just running and playing and being outdoors. Um, that had been a core identity piece for me for a long time. I had learned about CrossFit in the early teens, I think like 2013, 2014. And honestly, had just been afraid to ever mess around with something like that. And that's all tethered back to my sense of belonging, and feeling like an outsider. That here's this really, really small, dedicated group of what I, at that particular point in time, saw as just badass athletes. And after the incident with my father, I decided that I wanted to do something different with my training practice. So the spring of that year for my birthday, I joined a CrossFit gym and went in and was literally hooked on day one. I remember having a sensation of knowing how to do all of the things individually, but having absolutely no idea how to do any of them in couplets and triplets. It was like learning how to walk to me. It was like, I can run, I can jump, I can pick heavy things up, but doing those things together at a high intensity level, um, it smacked me around, and I really enjoyed that. So that catalyzed a look inward for me. And I wanted to get better at my performance physically. So I started listening to the Chasing Excellence podcast with Ben Bergeron and Patrick Cummings. And I started listening to Barbell Shrugged with Mike Bledsoe and his crew, Andy Galpin, and such. And just dove deep on that, started getting exposed to a lot of literature. Really, the one that stands out there is Mindset by Carol Dweck. I read that book after hearing it be recommended. And that notion of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, it showed me tangibly something that I had always felt inside and was like struggling with, am I just this way? And it's the way that I am, or do I have the ability to change? And I was able to reflect on things that I had done in my life previously and collect evidence that I do have a growth mindset when I want to. And really ran with that. I was like, okay, I've got like this amazing science professor telling me that like this is a real thing. Okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to keep pushing. And in March of 2022, I had been binge listening to those podcasts, and I was started all the way at the beginning and listened to them all the way through. And I was about to be caught up to real time. And I was honestly panicking because that was how I used my free time to grow, was that content. And right toward the end of catching up real time, I came across the Enlifted Coaches community. Mark England and Kimberly Kesting on Chasing Excellence, talking about how you could use words to practically architect your mindset. And they shared something called the should detox, which, if people are unfamiliar with that, I will invite you to pause listening to this and go to the Get Enlifted podcast, back to the mini episodes in the beginning of that, and find out what the should detox is. So I listened to that episode with the should detox on March the 14th of 2022. And I should detox my alcohol use. And I took my last drink 13 days later. So, that's the like quick and dirty way that I stopped drinking after having that experience of being present with my father being really ill. The deciding that I no longer wanted to drink was the key piece, right? Is having a practical tool where I could create the language inside my own heart and mind about where I wanted to go was the key. The first 100 days on that journey, really, really hard. And so this for me is the place where I really gave birth to my current passion, which is this notion of leaning into the simple and hard, right? And that mindset that doing something that is really simple, like not picking up a drink and taking a sip of it, does not make it easy. right? Simple and easy are two completely different things. So not drinking is really simple logistically. For me, it was incredibly hard to not drink, particularly in those first 3-4 months. So creating an environment and creating tools for myself to navigate that difficult journey was incredibly important in my success, right? And those, some of those tools are physical, right? Get rid of alcohol in the house, right? Like bring in seltzer water. Dark chocolate was my best friend. Other tools are very mental, emotional, and spiritually based. One of the key things that I did was write. Just pick up that 500-pound pen and write down my story about why I had been drinking since I was 10 years old. And again, really simple, super hard. And then from there, there are layers to that, right? Writing the story. Okay, well, now it's written. What else can I do with it? And I read it and cracked myself wide open, and that really helped support my ability to not drink, right? Is allowing myself to experience the emotional outpouring of why I had had a 35-year-long relationship with alcohol. Completely changed the game for me, because it took it from being a white knuckle willpower endeavor to, well, this is who I am. Like, I want to be an individual that is alcohol free. And I created the environment in which to do that through multiple avenues, right? The physical tools and the mental, emotional tools that I just touched on. But that singular point of clarity comes back into play, right? As I made the active decision about, this is my goal, this is where I'm going, I'm starting the journey, and I'm going to keep going. And I'm on that journey right now, today, and what it looks like for me to navigate the day to day now is incredibly different than what it looked like for me to navigate the day to day in, April of 2022.
That seems like it was a wild journey.
It was, for sure. And it is still in a very different way, right? And that's the beautiful thing about the notion of start and keep going, is that it's a wild journey when you start, and it's a wild journey when you keep going, and how it's wild changes.
It's never ending.
Yeah, it really is, right? I mean, it's that cyclical iteration of your experience. I look back at, the first 100 days that I've mentioned, right? And it was very much like okay, like, day at a time, making my way through, using tools to battle cravings, placing myself into environments where I felt safe was really important for me. And now the journey has expanded further out, where I I now have the ability to dedicate mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual energy that had been blocked and consumed by alcohol into other endeavors, right? Into being healthier holistically for myself. I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in. Into being a better father for my children and really showing up for them and leading them consciously to be the type of people that I know they have the ability to be. Well, that was something I was unable to do before. And I get to do now. I've created my ability to be that individual for them. Similarly with my wife, right? Our relationship is different, and on down the line, right? It keeps rippling out and out and out and out and out.
Well, that's great. What would you say makes you feel most inspired?
Most inspired. That is a really great question. For me, bear with me on this.
No worries.
I really see so many people in our society and our culture, men in particular, being locked into a role of provider, doer, at the expense of their own well-being, right? That we are shown from a really early age that we derive our self-worth from productivity. That you have to do things. You have to be successful. You have to be making money. Have to fill in the blank, right? There's so much pressure placed on us to be doing that. And so for me, I get really inspired by people that are living their life the way that they want to live their life. And particularly when it bucks that mold, right? People that are doing less first in order to fill up their own cup so that they can actually be of service to the people closest to them in their life and that actually mean the most to them. And they're not sacrificing their energy and their time for somebody else's idea of what they should be doing, somebody else's dream. And the reason that that's inspiring to me is because that is legitimately the thing that I think I struggle with the most right now, is that I see myself very often getting caught in that flywheel of productivity, right? Living somebody else's dream, like the rat race or whatever it is that you want to call it. And there are benefits to doing a lot of those things, right? Getting a paycheck, having insurance, right? Like whatever you want to say. And at the same time, we often only look at those benefits at the sacrifice of what we are sacrificing by getting so locked down into that perception of self-worth. So, speaking about like identity shifts, circling it back to like my story with alcohol and it being a wild journey, like that's part of the journey that I'm on now. And an identity shift that I'm working on is, how can I create more stability and downregulation and calmness and centeredness in my life for myself, for my family, my loved ones, my friends. And it's a clear goal of mine because I have spent so many decades burning the candle at both ends and being, go, 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 do, accomplish, check it off the list, whatever clever phrase you want to use for that type of approach to life.
Have you been able to find a balance with that?
I'm finding a balance for sure. Today is a really great example of that. It's like, this is something that has been at the forefront of my thought patterns today, is when and how do I have the opportunity to insert moments of balance into my day? So get up at 6:20. The power's out. Okay. How are we going to handle that? Right? We got to get the kids up for school. We don't have running water. We don't have lights. Right? So it's like this automatic pull into, okay, I got to figure this out. Like, I got to do a bunch of stuff. Okay, that happens. Kids go to school, drop my kid off at school, go to the gym, ride on a stationary bike, lift weights, do pull-ups, like, right? I'm doing stuff again. And then I'm like driving home. Okay, like what's, I got to do the laundry. I got to do this, do whatever. But I come up into a physical space of my room that I've created for myself. And I see my yoga mat and I see my meditation bench. I'm like, oh, right. I've just spent 3.5 hours of like, go, 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 do this thing. I'm going to sit on my meditation bench for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Sometimes I just sit, and it's just me. Today, I have a meditation app that I use. It took me through some guided breathing and box breath, 4 seconds in, 4-second hold, 4-second out, 4-second hold. I'm just grounding, like coming back into my center. And I'm like, I feel better. Okay. You know what? I'm going to do some yoga now too, because I have the time. I'm going to do 15 minutes worth of yoga because, I just did a circuit of 5x5s, and it would be really nice to just do some yin holds, and just stretch out my muscles and my fascia and downregulate a little bit more. Okay, awesome. Right. And I'm like, I did that. And then, I got up, I went out, met with a client, had that conversation, made myself some food, moving around, did some of the, laundry and dishwasher and all, life. Right. And and now I'm here talking to you, and, it's a full day. And we all often have that, right? Where it's like the second you wake up, something is demanding your attention. And sometimes it's an external thing, like the power is out. And sometimes it's an internal thing that just shows up right out the gate as soon as you open your eyes. And we have the opportunity in either one of those scenarios to recognize the space between the stimulus and the response. And so, myself included, so often just go straight from stimulus to response. There is no gap, right? There is no, all right, just took a breath. How do I want to respond to this? It's just an automated, like, boom, 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 boom. And sun up to sun down, right? From our head leaves the pillow to our head hits the pillow. That's the modus operandi for us, is like, we're just going, 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 going.
No, that's so, so true. I love how you mentioned just taking a breath and pausing. And that's something I've started implementing in so many areas of my life before making a decision, before doing so many things, just stopping, taking a step back and taking a deep breath in and out. And I used to personally struggle with people pleasing a lot and agreeing to do things I didn't necessarily want to do or have the mental energy or capacity to do. And even taking that deep breath in has helped me a lot in asking myself, why am I agreeing to do this? Why am I saying yes to this? Why am I going to do X action? Why am I in questioning myself? Taking that breath and then putting it into question and wondering why.
Yeah. It's, I love that. I mean, the breath is so powerful on so many different levels. And this is something that I am, at this stage of my life, truly recognizing for the first time. So the story here with this is, as a kid, going through the challenges of being bullied, right? Being teased, having a home life that involved a lot of mental, emotional, physical trauma. Our bodies adapt to those environments to protect ourselves, right? And you know, unless you're watching this, so I'll describe it, right? I was this guy, right? Like, shoulders up to my ears, hunched forward, chin down in my chest, eyes down, right? Like, I want to be invisible. I want to be left alone. And when you're physically like that, it's incredibly difficult to breathe well. And I have, no exaggeration, just learned how to nasal breathe within the last 12 months of my life. And I'm in my 47th year of life. And the reason that I'm able to nasal breathe now is because I started and I've kept going, right? I made a decision to change my life. I found a practical way to support me to do that. And I released a ton of energy that I had locked up in my body around my past traumas that led me to drink, right? So I address my drinking. I recognize why I'm drinking to begin with. I start processing that information and it unlocks my body, right? I would imagine that somebody listening to this has heard of the body keeps the score, right? Like there are books out there about how our physical beings remember emotional energy through posture and pain and all these different things. So I release that energy, it starts unlocking my upper body, right? I had coaching sessions where I was releasing energy and trauma from my past where my body physically was making noise, like popping and snapping and cracking. And as time has progressed through me having that experience, my posture has completely changed. And I've been able to start nasal breathing. Well, as you start nasal breathing, all these other things start shifting psychologically and physiologically, right? The way that I sleep changes, the way that I exercise changes, the way that my body responds to stress changes. I have been pre-diabetic, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Well, I started breathing correctly because of everything that I just described that I went through. And all of those medical metrics start shifting, which, is absolutely amazing to me. I mean, it blows my mind. I don't know how it works. I don't need to know how it works, but I know that it works. And I'm right at the front end of that journey too. Like I said, I mean, I'm 12 months in, and a lot of that was triggered out of doing a dedicated cold exposure breath work, like a Wim Hof seminar weekend, where I had started to feel the difference in the way that I could breathe and the way that I could regulate self, right? As you were just describing about taking a breath and, why am I people pleasing? Why am I making this decision? Why am I blank? I had started to feel that, learn about breath work, people like Wim Hof, find a workshop, go, get in the ice, do the breathing. That, talk about like a wild ride. That singular event completely dictated how I approached 2023. I went and did that in January, and within 2 weeks, I stopped training physical exercise because the ice and breath dropped me so hard into a parasympathetic nervous system state that I literally could not fathom going to the gym and putting myself in an upregulated, stressed out state. And this is a guy that was like, I was running ultra marathons and lifting weights 5 days a week. Like I lived to move. Like I didn't care if it was raining, snowing, like I was running multiple miles. And this is after working 8 to 12-hour days at my job where I was on my feet all day, and I work and live on a farm. So like I'm doing stuff all the time. And I did that one singular thing, got in the ice and breathed. And whatever it changed in my brain and my body, I just went, nope, dropped out of my gym, like just I still did my normal active lifestyle. Like I would go on walks, I'd do stretching and whatever, but the desire and the need to push the needle all the way into the red zone all the time just vanished. And I've spent from that was January 9th of this year until probably 3 weeks ago. I did no training at all. Like I just let my body recover. So I was, yeah, 9 months into being alcohol free. So my body needed to rest and recover from that journey. And all of the physical exercise, right? Like all of the posture changes, like everything physiological that I had shifted in myself. The cold and my breath said, it's time for you to take a break, dude. Like you need to heal. Slow it down. You're going to be great. Just trust yourself. You can do this. And like I said, I'm in the best shape of my life right now. I mean, sure, I may not be able to go run an ultra marathon right now in the same time that I used to be able to, but that's also one of those things where it's like, is that the goal? Nope, not the goal anymore. And it may be again someday. We'll see. So yeah, breath. Love it. Learning a lot about it. I actually just got, I don't know if you've read this book. I just picked this up. James.
Yes, Breath by James Nestor. Yep.
I
Have you
literally
read
just
it?
got that. No, I just got it from the library yesterday. So
Wow. I I also love how you mentioned that the goal isn't that how long you can run it in, but maybe it will be. And just how goals and identities and everything is constantly evolving and shifting. And at one period of your life, maybe it was your goal to be running it as fast as you can. But right now, that isn't.
yep. Yeah, and
So,
go ahead.
no, you good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like for me, goal shifting was something that I had an opportunity to get comfortable with, right? Is letting go because it's an identity piece. Again, it's like letting go of an old iteration, an old pattern that no longer serves me. There is often resistance to that. No, you can't stop that. Like, that's who you are. No, it's not who I am. Like, I am beyond that. I am aware of that thing. So the fact that I'm aware that it's a thing means it's not me, right? I'm the subject, it's the object, right? The object can change. You, as the observer, the witness, you're beyond all of those things. It can be hard to let them go because they've been with us for so long.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious when you were talking about breath and how you got into the Wim Hof and that breathing weekend, and then you took a long time off training. Have you gotten into any other breathing techniques in the meantime?
A little bit. I have dabbled, like I'd say I'm like novice at, getting into breath holds, doing like somatic release breath work. I have yet to find myself in like a real groove of doing a consistent breath work exercise. Generally, when I sit in stillness, I just breathe like my natural breath, and I'll slow it down, speed it up, hold it for a little bit. Yeah, I've yet to land into like, okay, like I'm doing Wim Hof every day or like 5 days a week. Um, there's a guy on YouTube, Breathe with Sandy, that I really like. And he does a variety of different breathwork techniques. Yeah, that's the short answer to your question.
No
It's
worries.
something that I'm really interested in. I'm right on the front edge of it.
No, I gotcha. I was just curious because you
Yeah, I
mentioned
mean,
breath, so I'm
yeah, yeah.
I'm always
Honestly, the
intrigued to
thing,
know people's background in breath work, breathing techniques, anything like that. I'm always curious.
I think the thing where I am, and I'm so glad you're asking this because it's like real time me reflecting on where I am, is I'm so excited that I can finally breathe through my nose. Like nothing else even matters. Like I haven't even considered what's next. I've just been like a kid in a candy store with like, yes, like I can breathe through my nose. Cause I like talk about fixed mindset. Like I was from the time I was a kid until this past year, I was like, this, I can't breathe through my nose. Like that's just my reality. And I find myself all the time now just sitting, breathing through my nose. And in my head, I'm like doing the world's biggest happy dance. I'm just freaking out with joy that I can actually breathe through my nose.
That's great, though.
So there's more to come, right? It's like as I'm like, okay, like my identity is now that I am a being that can breathe through his nose. Okay, well, what's next, right? Like that's okay, that's a mountain. Well, what's the next mountain? Well, the next mountain is going to be okay, go and start exploring more breath work, right? Um, go and start, making sure that you're nasal breathing when you're asleep, right? Um, whatever it may be. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. I'm curious in terms of identity and you being able to decide a different identity and shifting your identity. If at any point during this whole journey or process, you struggled with any self sabotage due to an old identity.
Yes. We're sure. Um, so one of the things that I have found incredibly helpful for myself is to know what that looks like and to also name that voice, right? So for me, that self-sabotage is victim mentality, right? And victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence, and that the victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. And so for me, that voice, that victim mentality voice, that I have is named Sid, right? And that I know when it's him or that part of me showing up, right? Wouldn't it be nice to just sit on the couch and have a beer? Yeah, Sid, I've heard that before. Like, what else you got? Because I'll sit on the couch and we'll watch a show or, and I'll have some tea, but beer is off the table because I want to be around for as long as possible for myself, my kids, and my wife. Right. So the key for me was understanding that I have a pattern of thoughts that meets the description of victim mentality, and that I very clearly identified what that voice is by giving it a name. And so thankfully, there are days where Sid is very much in the background and, he and I don't have much interaction. And then there are other days where it's like, he's really like climbing over, the seat and trying to wedge me out from behind the steering wheel and take over. And again, these are moments in time where I've learned from experience to identify the space between that stimulus and how I'm going to respond to it. Because when I don't, that's when he gets in the driver's seat, right? And I lose my temper or I make a decision that I'm likely going to regret later on in the day, whether it's doing something that is out of alignment with the person that I want to be, or not doing something that's in alignment with the type of person that I want to be, right? Those are two paths to the same, damn it, Sid took over.
Wow. So where did you hear about creating this separate identity for this self-sabotage version of yourself?
So it's twofold. So I, for a long time, had a sense of that, there's this devil on my shoulder, right? And had named that voice Sid in my head a long time ago, right? It was like the personification of the worst aspects of myself. And then again, through getting deeper and deeper into the personal growth, self-development community and the exposure to the Enlifted community, I tethered that with victim mentality, right? The Enlifted community taught me what the victim mentality is. And instantly there was this connection of, oh my God, that's Sid. And then I was able to am able to continue to make more and more progress toward identifying when that voice shows up to self-sabotage, to, derail me, make me apathetic, you know, whatever it may be at any given moment in time. And with all that said, I will also say that one of the most powerful pieces of my exploration of that voice is the acknowledgement and recognition of why Sid exists at all. Is that there have been moments in time in my past where that part of me did serve me, right? That it was helpful for me to take that approach in particular situations to protect myself before I had all of the tools that I have now. But what can happen is that we rest in that victim mentality, self-sabotage voice, right? Where it's like things have changed for us as far as our age, our environment, our relationships, but we're holding on to the attachment of, well, this worked for me in the past, so I'm just going to keep doing it. As opposed to, again, coming back to the like, I am not that one singular thing, right? That one singular thing is an aspect of me.
That makes so much sense. I love how you almost created a whole separate identity for this, though, because something I've been hearing so many guests say to me lately on the podcast is about becoming the observer in your own life. And it instantly made me think of that when you were talking about Sid doing these things and you talking to Sid. I could almost see you as if you were watching your own life as the observer, as you were watching Sid, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It makes perfect sense. It's very accurate. Those conversations have happened and will continue to happen because that voice is part of me, right? And one of the most impactful things that I've been able to do for myself is the embracing of my whole being, my whole experience, right? Ryan Holiday, in his writings on Stoicism, talks about amor fati, the love of fate, the love of everything that has come before. And for me, particularly in my earlier life, before I began my journey of being alcohol free, I hated what had happened to me. And I hated who I was in response to what had happened to me. And by default, because those things had happened to me and I was who I was. So by default, because I hated them, I hated myself. And so in order for me to, in the present moment, truly sit and say that I love me, I have to love everything that has happened to me before, amor fati, and accepting that I am where I am right now, who I am right now, because of all of those things, good, bad, and ugly, is the truth of my reality. And Sid is part of that. And Sid is a big part of my prior perfectionism, right? And like my coaching business is called Progress Over Perfection. Well, previous iterations of my experience, I was very beholden to things being perfect before I would take action. Well, that was Sid protecting me. Well, don't do this because if it's not quite right, you're going to get in trouble. And you know what happens when you get in trouble. So if it's not perfect, don't do anything. And then you're going to be good. Again, breaking down the story, analyzing where I came from. Why is this voice there? What is this voice telling me? Getting clear on that. And then being able to move through that story of perfectionism, of why is Sid behind the driver's wheel? Why am I drinking? Why? How, right? Root cause. And make that progress to integrate all of my experiences into my current self with the recognition that that gets to continue while I'm breathing until I'm done breathing. Like I get to keep doing that work. I get to keep iterating because the experiences are they're going to keep coming, right?
That's very true. I love that name, Progress Over Perfection.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, I'm not sure if you have only one, but I'm wondering, who would you say the most influential person is in your life and how they have impacted you? If you have two, that's okay.
Yeah, honestly, the person that jumps to mind is somebody that I really did not expect would jump to mind, but is. So when I was 21 years old, so I was squarely in the thick of some dark days at that point in my life. Very unclear as to who I was, where I was going, what I was doing. And yet something within my intuition led me to pick up a book by the Dalai Lama. And I kept the receipt from when I bought that book, and I just looked at it the other week, June 18th, 1998. And without even knowing it, like I read that book. It's called The World of Tibetan Buddhism, and set me on a path of looking at myself in a different way. Right? It's very much about consciousness and awareness, and that we've touched on a couple of times, right, that there's like the observer, the witness, right, that this constant state of awareness that we have inside ourselves that we can focus onto whatever we choose. And it's reflecting back on that now, it's 25 years later, I've never met the guy. I'm very, very likely to live my life without meeting the Dalai Lama. But he, steered me, just nudged me like a half a degree onto a different trajectory. So that one jumps up for sure. And then the other, honestly, like I'm gonna like group cluster it, that it's the Enlifted folks, that Mark England, Kimberly Kesting, Dave Robinson, Chase Tollison. Man, it's a really powerful thing to be handed a practical tool that you can apply to your internal dialogue that literally changes the course of your life. And like that for me was that should detox. I mean, 13 days after hearing it, I made a decision to step onto a new path.
Wow, that's great.
That's a cool question. And I really love that. I hadn't, I spend very little time thinking about that, of like, individuals from over the whole span of my life that mean a lot to me.
Yeah, a lot of us don't. It's not something you're necessarily thinking about. So if
Thanks
you
for
had
asking.
to, sorry, what was that?
I said, thanks for asking.
Of course. If you had to give your 20-year-old self any advice, what would you tell yourself?
I would definitely say, hey, that still small voice inside you that you hear at times, that is like suggesting to do something that seems completely crazy, risky, like out of left field, like listen to that voice. Like, that's your higher future self calling you forward. Yeah, I can remember like numerous times back in that window of my life where I had those thoughts or that voice show up, and I was just, I can't do that. Like, that's nuts.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you didn't listen to the voice?
Did not listen to the voice. So yeah, if I have the ability, which, quantum mechanics is working on making this real, to go back and give a message to myself when I was 20, it would be it. Yeah. Yeah. Listen to your intuition.
I love that. I'm big on intuition. I'm big on intuition. You have any tips for people to listen to their intuition?
Start with stillness. I think it goes back to what I was saying about finding ourselves in this constant state of doing and defining our self-worth through productivity. Start with stillness. 60 seconds. If you're at 0 seconds, start with 60 seconds, right? In the morning, in the evening, just sit. The quietest space that you can find, right? Create that quiet alone time to sit in stillness and just observe you. And do that for however long that it feels comfortable. and then stretch it out a little bit longer. Yeah. Create the environment that gives your intuition the opportunity to come to the fore.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. A
Simple and
lot.
hard. Quite hard.
That's with a lot of things. If you could be remembered for one thing in your life, what would you want to be remembered for?
Being a great father.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I mean, like, honestly, if my kids remember me as being a great dad, and that, if I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be a great grandfather, I'm done. Like, that's all I need. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, that's great. So I'm curious if there's anything we didn't touch upon that you want to touch upon for the listeners.
Oh my goodness, it's been a wonderful conversation. I would say that, our conversation has been wholly around mindset and identity for the most part. And that one of the things that is, for me, really important to share is that as somebody that practices holistic lifestyle, is a recognition that mindset is one foundational characteristic of our experience, right? The others that every single one of us do, every single human being on earth does, is we all think, the mindset piece. We all sleep, we all eat, and we all move, right? Even if you're only breathing, you're moving. And those four foundational pieces, they're all at interplay with one another. They all impact each other, right? The way that we move impacts what we eat, how we sleep, how we think. How we think impacts what we eat, how we sleep, how we move, and on down the line, right? And the possible interplays of those experiences are infinite, and that you're doing all four of those things already right now. You've already started. And every single day is an opportunity for you to keep going. And it's an opportunity for you to iterate, right? Is to get clear on where you want to go in any one of those things, or two or three or all four of them, and set yourself an attainable goal. And then just go explore and experiment with that and see what happens, right? Take notes. There's all right answers. And then after you've experimented for a while and taken some notes, well, revisit your goal. Okay, how did it go? Like, what did I learn? What's different? And then go again, right? And just go keep playing and having fun and experimenting and exploring with the endless possibilities that we all have around, how we live our lives.
Wow, I love that. And I completely agree how it is all completely intertwined. Each thing affects the other. Even what you eat affects how you think. It affects how you, like it all. I think a lot of people don't realize how connected they are.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know how connected they are, and it still blows my mind. I mean, like the food is mood thing. My goodness. Like I still get blindsided by that one on a regular basis. Like I just feel different. Why? Well, what did I eat? Oh, right. you know? Yeah. And yeah, I agree with you. It's definite
Yeah.
opportunity.
So I wanted to approach the podcast in a way where I wasn't only asking questions that I came up with or from me. So I asked my best friend to come up with a question that I could ask my guest. And her question is, where do you hope to see yourself in 3 years from now?
3 years from now. 3 years from now, I will see myself living a higher frequency of freedom in my ability to execute on a daily basis the things that serve me and move me forward, make me stronger physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Be an even better dad, even better husband, even better shape mentally, physically, emotionally, thriving coaching business, thriving farm. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. And what are you up to next? And where can the listeners find you?
You're very welcome and thank you. Yeah, it's been a blast. Really enjoyed talking to you. Best way to find me is on Instagram. I'm at progress.over.perfection.coach. And you can see what I'm up to in my personal journey there. I often share, fun little tidbits, thought exercises. Also, if you're interested in learning more about working with me on either mindset work specifically or holistic lifestyle practices in general, so it's a great place to reach out to me. And yeah, as far as what's next, just more of what I'm doing, continued progression, learning, serving, enjoying life.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Rob. And I will leave all your info in the show notes for everybody to connect with you directly. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Mando's Mindset. As always, if you enjoyed the show, if you would like it, rate it, subscribe, and share with someone you think would benefit from this. Thanks, guys. Until next time.